Today, we're getting to experience the coronation of a king of England. It's truly a historic moment that sometimes only happens once in a person's lifetime. William Shakespeare also witnessed a coronation of a king of England in his lifetime when James I came to the throne in 1603. And he was crowned on the same throne that you're going to see King Charles get crowned upon today, which is why I'm going to share with you some of the history about the Stone of Scone and the coronation throne that is the same one you're going to see the king sitting on today. Let's dive into the history. For centuries, and I mean like even millennia, like back to 400 AD that they know of, Scottish kings were crowned on the Stone of Scone. And this was a well-known part of history that Shakespeare even mentions in his play Macbeth. At the end, when Malcolm is crowned king, sorry about spoilers if you didn't know that part, he invites you to attend his coronation that will be taking place at Scone. This is the Scone that he's talking about. Scone is a place in Scotland, and the Stone of Scone comes from Scone in Scotland, and it was the place that kings went to be crowned king. So what is the Stone of Scone exactly? Well, it's also called the Stone of Destiny and sometimes called Jacob's Pillow, but it is a rectangular piece of sandstone that all the kings of Scotland have been crowned upon for centuries upon centuries. The stories of exactly where it came from or who made it originally is hotly contested, and honestly, it's just a great big mess trying to sort out the fact from the legend and the stories there. But many in Scotland will tell you that the legend is that it was the stone that Jacob rested his head upon in the Old Testament, which is why it's sometimes called Jacob's Pillow. While we may not know for sure where the stone itself began, we do have reliable records from what was happening to it from about the 13th century, because 1296 is when Edward I stole the stone and declared that all kings of England would be crowned upon the Scottish throne from then onward. Yes, that was just about as insulting as you might imagine it to be, and the Scots were none too happy about this. And once Edward had the stone back in England, he had a special chair made for the stone, crafting it specifically to house the Stone of Scone at the bottom. Leon Court shared a picture of this on Twitter recently, and I'm so thrilled that they did, because you can see exactly how the coronation chair works, and you can see the Stone of Scone located in the bottom. This is the same throne that Charles will sit upon, and that the Stone of Scone is situated inside of right at this very moment. The first time it was used for coronation of an English king was for Edward II. That would be old Edward I's son. But their glory about conquering Scotland was very short-lived, because famously, Robert the Bruce led a rebellion that saw Robert Bruce crowned as King of Scotland in 1306. And yes, he was crowned at Scone too. Talk about payback. Allegedly, there was a piece of metal attached to the scone that read, "Unless the fates be faulty grown and prophet's voice be vain, where'er is found this sacred stone, the Scottish race shall reign." Now, that metal's very existence is something of a myth in and of itself, but Sir Walter Scott claimed to have provided this translation. And it's interesting because when James I of England sat on this throne as well, and he was crowned King of England, he was crowned on the Stone of Scone too. And Scotsmen rejoiced at this occurrence, believing that the legend that had been attached to the stone in the first place had finally been fulfilled, and now a Scotsman was reigning where the Stone of Scone was. Now, I know you may be wondering, well, if the Stone of Scone is Scottish, then was it kept in England, and why? Yes, well, it turns out that yes, the Stone of Scone was kept in England for a long time, right up until the 20th century, in fact. In the 1950s, it was still being kept at Westminster Abbey, and a group of Scottish college students actually stole it and returned it to Scotland, where it stayed in Scotland for a couple of months while Scotland decided what exactly they were going to do about this. Ultimately, they decided to return it to England. England kept it for a little while longer, until in 1996, England decided to return the Stone of Scone to Scotland with a great deal of pomp and circumstance, as you might imagine. The agreement between England and Scotland about the Stone of Scone says that it lives in Scotland full time, except when it is returned to Westminster Abbey on the coronation of a new King of England or Queen of England in Elizabeth I's case. which is why you're seeing it come from Scotland to England this week for King Charles's coronation. So there you go. Now you can look for the Stone of Scone in the Coronation, and you'll be looking at something that Shakespeare looked at too. The very same thing. It is a living piece of history, and I hope you have fun trying to spot it in the Coronation throne today. Thank you for watching. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.